Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Quest for the Best Director podcast, also known as the Greatest Movie Director Bracket Ever podcast, also known as whatever we decide to call it that week. I'm your host, Matthew Moore, and with me is the guy who is the only magician I know that isn't an actor, Caleb Ferguson. Caleb, what's up?
Hey Matt, I'm doing fantastic today.
Fantastic. Wow, that's why so fantastic?
I don't know, I love both of these movies. I thought they were both like excellent. I had a great time watching them.
Mhm.
Excited to dive into them.
I think they were both good. I don't know if I had a great time watching one of them at least, but
Really? I'm
I
surprised.
thought they were both
Uh,
good. I don't think they're both like a great time.
yeah,
Oh, I had a great time.
Interesting. And also with me is a guy who is anything but fake. Derek Shorzynski. Derek, how you doing?
keeping it real.
Keeping it real? You're not keeping it fake? I'm glad. Derek, would you say that you're more or less of a good time than watching the children or watching us?
Probably more of a good time because
More
I
of a
don't commit adultery and make my husband kill himself.
well, not
Wait,
you, Derek.
he did not kill himself. I thought he was in an accident.
No, he killed
He
himself
killed himself.
Wait, how are we supposed to get that?
because he like pew pew, right? Sure, that was like the reference.
Because I actually like went back and watched that sequence, like that transition, like two or three times because I like just didn't like I assumed we were supposed to pick up that he was in a car accident or something because I heard like there's like an ambulance sound and I don't know, that's
Yeah,
what I assumed.
no, I thought it was assumed that he killed himself. That was the ambulance sound for.
Yeah, I think if he was in a car accident, you would see him driving. You know what I mean?
That's true. And I guess the other thing is that when it transitions to that scene, there's a big crowd like around the apartment.
Yeah.
Whereas like if he was in a car accident, they wouldn't really have any reason to be there. So I guess he probably did kill himself. Okay, that changed my wow, that really changed the end of the movie.
Way less of a good time, huh?
Yeah.
Um, well, I guess let's hop into that movie since we're already kind of talking about it. What do you guys think of Children Are Watching Us?
Very frustrating
Good work.
because it's like I can. It's very honestly the only thing I could think of is like Shakespearean because like there's that one little thing that happens that if it didn't happen everything would have been fine. It's like if Nina could have just been like, yeah, I'm not. I went off with this this dude one time. That was probably enough times. I'm gonna be done. And obviously, I shouldn't give in to temptation and talk to this guy while I'm on vacation alone without my husband again. So I should probably just leave the situation. It's like, yeah, just leave the situation. That's what you should do. And it's like, but it's only for a few days. It couldn't hurt. It's like, no, just leave.
I understand what you mean Shakespearean from like a narrative perspective, but I think it's not Shakespearean from a tone perspective, right?
Oh yeah, not at all.
So much more raw than like Shakespeare. I mean, at least Shakespeare, you have like usually some ridiculous side plot,
Hmm.
but there's no.
Yeah, there's no ridiculous side plot to make you think. I guess I can sit through this without feeling like killing myself.
Yeah, well, that might be a bit too far, but at least
I don't know. I felt so bad for that
leaving it
kid.
pretty unhappy. Yeah, it was pretty.
He has to watch his mother basically frolic around with this stranger while he's just trying to have a good time at this vacation. And then it's just like he gets his hopes up that his family's coming back together and he just wants his mom and dad to be happy. And finally, after a little while, they're happy together again. And all of a sudden, his mom's, banging the stranger again in front of like hundreds of people.
What I thought was cool is how like this movie has like a lot of very like melodramatic results, but nothing that actually happened in the sequence of the movie was like that extreme. Like there were no like grand like she never like has some great crisis moment or whatever. It's just kind of like bad decisions, small ones that are made over and over. But I
Oh
think it
yeah,
Yeah,
made the end result like very believable. Like I think this is like a very realistic story. It didn't seem over like none of the steps were so huge.
I totally agree. I mean, I guess the one step is like towards the end of part one where like the guy's like shaking her and the kid bites him, but even
Oh yeah.
not anything too huge. I would agree. I think that kind of adds the element of it. It's really fun, not fun, but I think it's interesting to compare this movie to oh geez, Day of Wrath.
Oh yeah.
You know, because we are kind of throwing the melodramatic, right? And in this case, like it's kind of the opposite, right? Where in Day of Wrath, honestly, not that much is really going on, right? But
Hmm.
also melodramatic. In this movie, it's like a lot's actually going on. You know, there are a lot of decisions being made by every single character. Um, most of whom have almost full knowledge of the situation, but it's played way more subtly.
Well, yeah, I think like also kind of like what I was saying before, like none of the characters are behaving in any sort of like extreme manner like they were in Day of
Yeah.
Wrath. Like in Day of Wrath, like that woman is like possessed by lust. She goes crazy. Whereas like in this one, like yeah, she's kind of like messing around with other guys, but like even when like she kiss like the guy like kisses her on the beach, she's turning away. Like she doesn't really want it. And that's why I think it seems like more believable. She's not just like some wanton woman, lusting after all these guys. She's compromising her morals slightly, but not
Mm.
extremely.
Except for by compromising at all, kind of like there's no slight. I think in this case, kind of
Yeah,
like
that's true. But I think like the difference is in like Day of Wrath, like she's has infidelity, but is like literally like praised with like love for this man. Whereas in this one, she has infidelity, but it's definitely a much more like constrained.
Yeah, I'm really sorry, guys. I just I didn't like introduce any of this stuff. So really quick, I gotta rewind this back a bit. We're talking about Vittorio De Sica's The Children Are Watching Us versus Orson Welles' F for Fake. The winner, whichever one we decide is better, we'll move on in our bracket. The Children Are Watching Us, which is what movie that we're kind of discussing right now, is about this guy Andrea who is married to this woman Nina. They have a son named Prico, and Nina basically repeatedly cheats on Andrea until which leads to him killing himself. I'm sorry. I think for those plus someone out there who's really lost. Continue.
I don't know. The thing is though, it's kind of like she even says like I can't live without you at the beginning. So I don't think there's like a level to this that's not like she's going full in. Like I agree it's not from like I don't think a lustful place. I think this is like an ideological thing that she's trying to live for romance or whatnot.
That's true, but
Like
she doesn't.
her
She does say like at one point though, like that she doesn't feel that way anymore, and she just wants him to go away. Like for a solid chunk of like probably like half of the movie, she's not in that state of I can't live without you. She's like I'm over that. You need to go away. And I guess it is true. The male I can't remember his name, but the male suitor is basically like a lot more extra.
the thing is um I took that more of like being like she was just trying to like play strong. It's like she in that situation I imagine kind of has to. What's
I
up?
also noticed that I don't know if this was like supposed to be super symbolic, but there was one scene where one of the characters like turns over a I think it's like when she runs away the first time and he like is walking through the hallway and he kind of like turns over the page on the calendar and it's like the 13th. So
Hmm.
it's like an unlucky day or something like that. I thought that was a pretty cool subtle little.
Yeah, there's a bunch of little things that I really liked. I think his framing on almost every scene is pretty clean. You know,
Mhm.
like I enjoy the scene where it's like the three of them like eating dinner on Mother's Day, and it's like the doorway is like kind of our camera, and for like a second,
Oh yeah.
like the perfect family, right? It's like that really like prototypical like Three's Company happy family vibe, and like it's like so ridiculously like fake. Like this kid
Yeah.
didn't want to even buy flowers for his mother. Obviously, they just gave him money, and it's all just
Speaking of
so inauthentic. Yeah.
sorry, speaking of doorways, there was that really cool scene where they do like the Godfather thing, where she walks into the room with the male suitor and like closes the door on the camera. I thought that was
Yeah, I like that a lot too. Well, I liked it as a I liked it as a shot. I didn't like it as a plot point. Oh my.
Yeah, right.
You know what it actually reminds me of narrative wise though?
Hmm.
I was thinking not quite Shakespeare. I was thinking it kind of reminds me of Jane Eyre. You guys remember Jane Eyre?
Vaguely. How so?
Just like it's kind of like no one's quite likable, and then you have this one character who's like constantly kind of making the wrong decision. Obviously, like Jane Eyre's decisions are more just like stupid and less like unethical, you know. But also, it's just always kind of like whoa, well, not woe is me, but like it's never really a happy vibe. Just the vibe of it, I guess, and the kind of how the narrative flows with Jane Eyre to me. I don't know. That's what
I kind of disagree though with like your idea that like none of the characters in this movie are likable because I would say like most of the characters besides the mom are pretty likable. Like I liked the dad the whole movie. I
I
thought the
guess
maid was
I should
cool.
say like outside of the characters that like none of our side characters are likable though. You know what I mean? Like
That's
every single person that we interact with, um, they like the grandma for instance. She was so terrible.
yeah.
Yeah.
But she actually, by the way, we talked about there's no like comedy parts. That's probably the most comedic part, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's what I mean.
Mhm.
Like more, once again, shout out to another rewatch, more Great Expectations, where it's like kind of this misery, which like is still really depressing, is played for laughs. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's definitely the funniest scene in the movie. I think is when his grandma's getting like carried away on her chair, talking about how spoiled this kid is.
Mhm.
But it's
I,
like, also really depressing because like she's terrible to him.
yeah. I think another thing about how you said that none of the side characters were likable is that like all of these men that are like trying to basically get in the mom's pants are like the main one like is sort of like a decent looking guy, but the one that she meets on the beach is not a very handsome man. He looks really skeevy. And I don't know, that kind of like colors to me at least, it like colors my emotions on like her infidelity that like it's not like this guy's like a supermodel. It's like trying to woo her. Like he's kind of just like a weird, creepy looking guy.
Derek, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, hmm.
I it was an I thought it was interesting, I suppose, but it definitely the fact that people were trying to like woo her, even though they were knew she was married or whatever. I thought was the more interesting part of that because it's like all these dudes know that she's married. They, like talk to the husband, but like even still, I think it just showed like something. It was interesting because they also showed like women or whatnot trying to, or in a, I guess a negative way. So it's kind of like they're showing all these characters negatively.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up too. The fact that like this female companion to the creepy beach guy is like trying to basically wingman to get him with the mom. And that's
Hmm.
really weird too because she's not even acting in sort of like a lustful, you know, self-interest. She's just like morally bankrupt. Maybe in a way like even worse than the man because at least to some degree obviously it's immoral but at least you can say like oh he's just driven by passion or
Yeah.
raw animal emotion but the woman she has no like base instinct to do this immoral thing. She's just doing it for fun.
Yeah. Like because a lot of the women in this movie are really bad, right? I don't know if our
Yeah.
maid. Maid's great. Speaking of Day of Wrath, at first I was getting like grandma vibes from the maid, you know?
Hmm.
She ended up being like, arguably one of the best characters in it. Also just an amazing performance. I thought she was a really good actress. But yeah, I thought it was all sort of strange. Like, why are these characters doing these things? Like, it doesn't make sense. I don't know.
I don't know. It was kind of. I thought it seemed like the point of the movie was to show like the adults doing like adult things, and the children kind of are freak out seeing it. It's kind of like his maid, I suppose, when he's with his grandmother, going off to be with I think the pharmacist. He was a pharmacist, and after she puts him to bed, and him seeing that, I think that was kind of like indicative of the whole film. Kind of like this adult world that Rico is like forced to take part in.
Yeah, and I think like the shots, like the cinematography does a really good job of showing that too, where it's always kind of positioned so that you really see how small he is. He being Preco. You know, like they're always doing like whenever he's you have the scene towards the beginning where he's like taking a scooter down, right? And in that shot, he's it's a very like obvious close up, you know? It's and he feels big, you know, he feels powerful. You see him talking to this other littler kid and see how powerful he is. When he's around these adults, they never give him close ups. You know?
Hmm.
Besides like kind of that train scene, but even then not really. It's never close ups of him. It's always well also besides the crying scene, of course. But whenever there's action happening, I guess, Preco is you just see how small he really is in this world and like how little he can affect things and like the frustration from that.
Yeah, I think they do a pretty good job too of like using the framing and to basically show the juxtaposition of like this kid world and the adult world, because it's not as if like this kid is only interacting in the adult world and just like is an observer there, but he's also like an active participant in his own kid-like world. Like we see him playing with other kids, and then that other scene with like the scooter where he's like telling him not to ride it and stuff like that. Like he's like these kind of two parallel worlds going on. One is like a very dramatic adult world, and then one is like a kid's world that's also dramatic but kind of on a smaller scale. And it's kind of cool to like see those two go play out together.
Yeah, and also you haven't think about my last comment, like how when they do give him these close ups, it's always like it's outside of the action, right?
Hmm.
It humanizes him, you know, but it almost makes it so much more frustrating for us, like seeing how, like also seeing how at least seriously he takes himself. I think makes it so much more frustrating when he is kind of lost in this adult world, you know, which is why
Hmm.
juxtaposition to the child world is because you see that in this child world he's like a very obvious life and he has thoughts and he has you know he has wants and desires and in this kid world he's cast aside. He's just an observer, you know. Children are watching us.
Yeah, I think too the movie does a great job of showing us like that internal world that he has and all of these like thoughts and fears with that scene where he's on the train and looking in the mirror, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like almost like some sort of dream sequence or something. Um, where it kind of like shows basically just like almost clips from all of the kind of like dramatic things that he's seen, and you can kind of see how like all of the stuff that he's observed is sort of like coming back into the subconscious almost or something like that, or like affecting him on a very emotional level. And what's interesting is like some of the stuff that's coming up like isn't even that important, like wouldn't seem that important or big to an adult, but it seems very like scary and dramatic to a child. And I think that was kind of like transportive to me. It reminded me a lot of being a kid and how stuff that no one seemed to care about or seemed normal to them was very like frightening to me. And like it kind of had that, where he's like remembering the puppet show where the puppets are like killing each
Mm-hmm.
other and beating each other up, and everyone else was just kind of laughing, and he was like freaked out. And I don't know, that like kind of brought back memories to me of like I think that's like probably a pretty common experience for kids to be freaked out by benign stuff.
But also like that these adults try to like impose on him, you know, these sort of sort of emotions of how he should feel, right? Because it's not like he goes to his dad and he's like, "I saw the puppet show, dad, and I was so scared the entire time."
Hmm.
Excited because he knows he's supposed to feel excited, but obviously we find out later that he was quite scared by it.
And also like the context of the puppet show is like two men fighting and one killing the other over a woman's affection, which is obviously like
Yeah,
pertinent to the story's thing. So it's almost like the society is like teaching children and him specifically that like, in romance you're supposed to be a savage basically, which is obviously what's happening in his life too.
I thought that was interesting because I thought that the puppet show was a good opening because it was like almost allegorical for the whole drama of the movie. It's like the guy fighting over and literally killing the other dude for the love of this woman, his wife. So I thought that was funny that the puppet show is like a smaller version of the story, larger story.
Yeah, and I guess like in the end, that is really what happens because I didn't really quite put that together until now. But the other guy that's like trying to woo the mother is he literally ends up
Yeah,
basically killing the father because the father kills himself.
yeah.
And I
And then
mean,
they
we can
do
only
the
imagine that like afterwards, the mother's gonna go marry this other guy since she's no longer bound by.
Yeah, I think it's very heavily implied that she does.
Yeah, so like in a way, he really like not directly, but he does end up killing him. And I think like there might be a name for this technique, but we definitely have seen it before in The Shining. I remember where we sort of like get a preview of what's happening, kind of like some sort of extended foreshadowing or something, where we basically get to watch the whole movie in miniature before it happens. Um, that happened in The Shining, where he kind of like shows you around the mansion and kind of previews all the scenes that are going to happen.
It's a bit more extended, but yeah.
Yeah, and then I think since we were talking about Shakespeare, I believe this also happens. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is like Hamlet, right? It's a play, and the play is basically everything that's happening in
yeah.
Hamlet.
Except for there's another level because Hamlet sets it up himself.
Yeah, exactly. And I really like that.
I enjoy.
That actually is one thing that this we were kind of talking earlier about like similarities between the two movies and how this week was kind of one of the few times where there wasn't that many similarities. But if there was one, I guess they both do have this like movie within a movie, or so at least a story within a story aspect to them.
Yeah. Though I think the difference there is also that the children are watching us is used to be like a narrative uh, function, or F for,
Y-
fake is for thematic reason.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
also F is for fake is just way more meta with it too, right?
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. But it's a small one.
You could look at the puppet show innocuously. Well,
Yeah. Also, the dance at the end of puppet show, the Tarantella, I believe is supposed to be like representative of two people having sex.
mm-hmm.
So it's kind of funny that these two puppets have sex after killing the husband or whatever, and that's pretty much probably what's going to happen at the end of the children watching.
It's kind of like this savagery of banality, you know. Um, People kind of think that like, oh, we're not. And also, this movie took place in 1944, so maybe it's extra pertinent to the time period. But people think, oh, we're not inherently bad. We're not killing people. We're not doing all these. We're not. What we're doing is at least all within society's bounds. You know,
Hmm.
cheating is wrong, but as we can see from like the woman at the beach and stuff, it's still societally accepted and among some even encouraged. You know,
Hmm.
what the movie's claiming is there's a savagery kind of in that, right? It's not that the savagery's left. People just kind of figured out how to work around it. How to work around these societal rules to do the same things that they were doing anyways.
I speaking of like the other way, other small way that we have a similarity between these two movies. I'm curious to hear what you guys thought about the magic show, um, where he's kind of like doing it in the round, and um, the boy is like standing like way too close to the show, so it's obvious that like if he pays attention, he'll be able to see behind all the tricks just because he's so close. Um, and I'm kind of curious what you guys thought was the significance of that. Because obviously it's like the child kind of like seeing behind the curtain in a way, but I haven't quite developed my thoughts.
I thought that was supposed to be literally him about to show us behind the curtain, and this is like the precursor, kind of like we're the child and about to show us behind the curtain a story of fakery, i.e., magician show.
And yeah, how he's yeah, like Derek's saying, we're seeing behind the curtains of this relationship, much like the child is seeing behind the curtains of this magic trick. You know. and how it's not all fine and dandy and etc.
The one thing that I wasn't sure of is this child supposed to be of the father, or is he an illegitimate child of the suitor?
I thought that was just he was. I didn't think that was like a thing supposed to talk about, but I'd assume father.
Because in
Yeah,
the
I wouldn't see
beginning,
why. Yeah, go.
doesn't the guy who's like she's having an affair with say something along the lines of like he wants to see the child or something, or am I misremembering?
I didn't remember him ever saying
Yeah, I don't remember that either.
I may have misinterpreted them.
maybe he
That's
does.
good. I kind of like the narrative of the story a lot better that way. I think it's a lot cleaner.
Yeah, because especially like, mentioning specific time, like, it wouldn't really make sense, right? Like, why wouldn't he just, if it was his child, why would he not care more about the child?
Yeah, he does end up, injuring him. I don't know. To me, that seems strange.
I think if you introduce that, like, you have to at least somewhat like um elaborate on this character of the suitor,
Yeah,
and
I agree.
emotionally he seems pretty one note. So I wouldn't gonna go to say that probably not the case. Um, I do want to talk about historical context here a bit, and maybe there's not nowhere to go with this but I'm not much of a history guy. So it takes place in 1944, right? So that's right as World War One ends, or do we still have like a year or two left?
Wait, 1944?
Yeah, I think this movie takes place.
Yeah, there's still a year on the war.
It's got a year in the war. What
Mm-hmm.
Italy doing right now?
They've already surrendered, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
So I want to fact check that one. I'm curious.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's hard to ignore history, right? With like,
Yeah.
especially with these like kind of art movies, for lack of a better term.
Okay, so apparently they switched sides because they were on the Axis powers, and they switched to the Allies, like surrendered and switched sides in 1943. So this was after they had switched sides. So they were still fighting, I think, to some degree, but this time against Germany.
It's really interesting. Do you guys think that informs this movie at all?
I think that's supposed to inform like the movement it's part of. At least apparently, according to what I looked up, it's like the neo-realist movement in 1943 to 1950 in Italy, and this was like early. So I think the whole movement's probably impacted largely by this Italy.
So what's the neo-realist movement then? I haven't really done any research on that. What is that,
Well,
and how is it influenced by the war?
well, the whole idea of neo-realist like movement in Italy was to show like depictions of real despair, like as they would come. Nothing more, nothing less. Kind of just very fixated on emotions of despair and the suffering of the lower middle to poor class.
I think I definitely like came across for sure because like as we brought up like towards the beginning of the pod, this movie is
Love it
dramatic
when you
without
call it the
being
pod. Sorry.
yeah.
Excited.
This movie is it's dramatic without being melodramatic, which I really liked.
But there's also like a feeling of helplessness, right? Which I would also associate with a few realist movies I've seen, where it's kind of like the characters. Well, I guess the characters were sympathetic too, right? The characters who kind of see things through aren't a lot
Hmm.
of agency, and even you could argue that possibly is even saying the mom is even without agency. Although I think that might be a tougher argument, but definitely the dad and the kid are without agency, And things they each have to deal with what's being thrown at them. And obviously the dad deals with that through suicide, which is obviously awful when the kid can't even do that, He's like even more helpless. I mean,
Well, he doesn't understand the idea of suicide.
yeah, exactly.
But he does understand the idea that his mother is a bad person. That's
Mhm.
he has to like away.
Sorry.
I think the mother to me sort of like alternates in agency. So it feels like when she's trying to be good, her agency is sort of stripped away because these guys are like still keep bothering her and won't leave her alone. Then even when she goes, on a vacation and tries to get away, which is like the reason they went on a vacation was pretty much explicitly so she could get away from this guy. Even when she does, he still finds her there. And like basically like she definitely puts in an effort to try and like escape her temptations or whatever you want to say, but people keep making it hard on her and making it not easy for her to get over this guy. Um, so I think like, but then again, when she runs away, I feel like we're definitely supposed to feel like that's her doing, and she had agency. So I feel like she's sort of like half and half, like she has some agency, but not entirely. And
I
then the kid
think.
definitely has no agency, but I feel like the dad has some, sure.
What issues does that have?
Well, I think like he goes on this trip. He basically arranges that whole section of the movie. He sends the kid to boarding school, which sort of sets up the finale of the movie. Um, I
Well,
mean, those
the
are just ones I can
boarding
think of
school
off
is
the top.
after, because his mother runs away with the guy and he sends him to boarding school so he can kill himself.
Yeah, but I think also like I don't know. To me, that shows agency because it's him basically trying to get his kid out of the bad situation.
Well, the bad situation is him like killing himself. That's why he does it. He doesn't want his kid to like have to discover his body kills himself.
It's true, but even then, like killing himself still is him showing his agency. Like he enacts several
Technically,
Is
that
different
it
helps
though, or is
stages.
it an
him.
inevitability?
I don't think it was an ability. In fact, like I didn't see it coming at all.
And
I
what's the
was
puppet show saying then?
Yeah, I thought it was coming for sure.
I
To
didn't.
be honest,
I didn't think about it at the time. I'm just saying, looking back, like I don't even think it has to be inevitability in terms of, like, did we expect it to be not? But just like this puppet show is saying, two men fight, one gets the woman, the other dies. Maybe he doesn't have to like fully kill himself, but he will never be like living in the same way again.
Yeah, obviously, I think like that it was foreshadowed, so it was inevitable, like in that way. But I think like if we pretend that this movie is real life and is existing in a world of drama but not melodrama, I think it actually makes more sense for him to not kill himself. I feel like him killing himself is the only like truly melodramatic act in the film. Everything besides that feels
I don't know.
grounded in something that could happen, but then the suicide kind of takes to a place of like, oh, we're being a little bit over the top.
I don't know. For me, that wasn't too much over the top, like at all. It's like this guy, he's trying. Okay, so first his wife cheats on him and she leaves. So he's like, oh well, I'll try to do the best I can with the situation. I'll send him to my mother because he needs a mother figure of some kind to take care of him because I'm working and I can't take care of him. So he does that. Then that's all before the kid. So he's trying to like, oh, ugh. And then all of a sudden he gets sick. The kid gets sick, and his mother shows up again to make sure that he's all right. Still loves the kid. Then he has to, but the kid really wants him to be together with his mom. So it's like, oh well, I don't really like this woman. She keeps breaking my heart, but I'll do it for my kid. Then he's like, okay, I can. I think she's reformed. I forgive her. I'll try to make the best I can with it. And then plans a nice vacation for her, dresses up nice and everything, just so he can make her happy. And maybe that's why she was leaving him. He wasn't making her happy. So he tried to make him change. And then later he finds out that she left their kid at the train station and put him in a cab and left. And he's, after he did all this to make her happy, so obviously there's nothing he can do. He just stuck with it.
Hmm.
And you see, like,
And he doesn't have any option for his kid other than like, I don't know, sending him to a boarding school or something, which means he's never gonna see him. So his kid's pretty much like the only thing he got, but the only way he can take care of the kid is to send him to boarding school.
yeah. So what does he have then?
Yeah, exactly.
The other characters comment on him, right? Like, oh, that poor guy. Really sucks to be him. It's not any character who's like we see as like somewhat objective, like pities him. You know what I mean? They don't try to help him. They don't. I guess what I'm trying to say. And then our characters who are subjective in the matter, like any of his relations and stuff, or like her sister, the wife's sister, Nina's sister. They're like, trying to like make his life worse, by either treating the kid poorly or suggesting that it's his fault somehow. It's awful. So I think that
Yeah.
that removes his what's the word we're using? His agency for me.
Yeah.
I actually
At least it's some degree.
reflection. The only character who can really argue his agency is the child. Weirdly enough,
Hmm.
he's the one that gets the mom to stay, right?
Yeah.
He's the one that says, I don't want. If mom leaves, I leave.
That was the most heartbreaking, one of the most heartbreaking scenes because like dad's trying so hard and his
Mm-hmm.
kid. I understand like the kid is probably spend most of his time with his mom because dad has to work. So that's heartbreaking. Like this woman that just keeps breaking your heart. Kid rather take his side, her side, even though the kid doesn't understand that. Probably at this point he's pretty young, so he just wants his mom.
I don't
But
even know if he doesn't. I don't even think it's like he's taking her side because you also get the line like the next scene where she's like, he hasn't even talked to me, you know, since I've gotten back. Or maybe we're talking about the husband. I'm not sure.
yeah, I thought he was talking about the husband.
Oh, okay, that should make more sense. But either way, I don't think it's like he's taking the mom's side. 'Cause he's still like extremely nice to the dad. I think he doesn't realize there's sides to take. I think
Yeah,
each one of the
Yeah.
parents there.
yeah, it is sad for the dad. So sad. That scene, I would, if I was that dad, I would like, that scene probably would have committed suicide after that. That
Yeah,
was
he
rough.
made it a lot further than Derek would have apparently. But yeah, I think
I,
also to go back to the mom's agency, Caleb. You said that like she has agency when she's not with them. When she's with men, she does have agency. But isn't that like not having agency? I don't understand. It's like saying like talking like a drug addict or something. And you're like they can't prevent it because all this societal shit that's going on. Like they're not doing drugs, they can't prevent it. But when they're doing drugs, they should be able to change. It's like I don't. I think it's pretty directly stated that she has no agency, right? Where there's a scene where she's like, if he's with me for 1 minute, like I can't control myself, right?
yeah. My point is though that like she does try and get away. Like it's not like she obviously has a lapse in discipline, but like to some extent that's not necessarily her fault. Like she tells this guy to his face like dozens of times, "Don't be with me anymore. I don't want you here. Go away." And then like he just doesn't care. So I think to some degree like she's being compromised against her will, but then eventually she falters. So like obviously that doesn't
Yeah, but like,
excuse her,
how long are you
but I
supposed to
think
do it for? You know what I mean?
yeah, you're right.
Be tortured all your life, like
Yeah.
just trying to search for happiness. What's fucked up about all of this is they all have an idea of what should happen, right? Maybe less with the dad, but the mom thinks that she should not be with these men, right? The kid thinks that he should want his parents to be happy and together.
Mm-hmm.
But weirdly enough, maybe all of those things kind of work against like their optimal kind of happiness, right? Or if the kid had just let his mom go, maybe he's happier if
Yeah,
he had.
that was like the tipping point. I think that's why it was like so sad for me. Is like, oh kid, if you just let your mom go, your
Yeah,
dad would have been so much happier, and eventually, I don't know, he'd probably be not as happy, but probably moderately so.
and if she just never came back, you know what I mean?
Oh my god, if she never came back, that would have been so many little things. If he didn't get sick or whatever, and his mom wasn't like told or whatever.
Yeah, and then also if the dad had ever just told her not to stay, I think he does it not for her but for his kid, right?
Hmm.
Kid's prioritizing his parents being together, dad's prioritizing his kid being happy. If he had actually just not put his kid first, or not put the opinions of his kid first, funnily enough, right? Like his kid would probably be, or would certainly couldn't be sad in the long run. He would very likely be happier in the long run. You know.
Oh yeah.
Coming back to the
Yeah.
kid's agency and like his ability to like take sides, I feel like at the end he definitely is shown like becoming a man, and he doesn't even really go to hug his mom. He just like he hugs the nanny, and then they tell him to like go to his mom, and he kind of just like stands in front of her, and then he just like walks away like firmly. To me, that was definitely like a becoming a man, and him like finally like kind of getting some agency for himself a little bit.
I think especially contrasted with the shot at the end of Act One or Part One, it's even more.
Which shot are you talking about?
It's literally just the kid crying.
Yeah.
It calls over his face as he's crying, and the mom's like, "You're not gonna tell your dad about this, right?" He's like, "No, I'm not gonna tell my dad," because that's the kid, abiding to his parents' will. That's him just trying to get his parents together, doing anything. That's him showing he has no agency. And he's miserable. The situation's happening. Like he refuses to actually stop it. And then, yeah, part there with that scene. You're talking about Caleb in part two. The shot of part two, where he's just walking away. I think is really good, really strong stuff.
Yeah. Also, that shot in the train with the dad when traveling to grandmother's house. That was also a shot.
Yeah,
So,
that was really
where
cool.
you see them in the window when like the kid talks, Preco says, "I want water." It's like, and then you see dad say, "Okay, here," and you see him in the window when he talks, and then the cup in the window as he gives it to Preco. I thought that was cool,
Yeah.
especially for a film in 1944.
Um, I guess with all that, you guys ready to move on to F is for fake? F for fake, not is for fake.
Yeah, is a tricky title. I keep saying F for fear. I don't know why.
Yeah, well, it's really funny. I tell you guys about my viewing experience with the movie. So I watched about half of it at work. I'm like, I cannot watch the movie at work. I really have no idea what's going on. So I stopped watching it, and then I think like later that night, or it was like the next night, it was the next night. I was like, or the next afternoon, started watching it again just from the beginning. Got 15 minutes into it, and Kiana's like, Matthew, let's watch a movie tonight. Kiana being my girlfriend, 5 years at home, and I'm like, okay. And like, obviously we couldn't watch Children Watching Us because it's impossible to find. So I'm like, F for free because I watch that. Um, and then when we watched the movie, I was quite intoxicated while we were watching the movie. So 3 tries in, I didn't watch, still couldn't watch it. And this morning I woke up and I finally watched it all the way through. So I have like at least like at least like 2.5 times the amount of notes I usually have, but would have had if I just watched the movie once through. Because about the first 15 minutes I watched like 4 times. So yeah, but it was a great movie. None of this is indicative of the quality of the movie. I just thought it was kind of funny. What do you think about the quality of the movie, Caleb? Was it good?
I loved it.
Bad?
I love movies like this where they
Yeah.
have like different meta levels, and they kind of go up and down between them. But even though they're going up and down between them, like they have a narrative as a result of them going up and down, if that makes sense. I don't know. I love it. That's like one of my favorite styles of movie. And also how it's sort of set up in a way where you're supposed to be confused, but like it's okay if you're confused because that's the intent. So like you can kind of just like you don't feel like, oh my god, I don't get what's happening. I have to back up and rewatch that so I understand it. Like it doesn't feel that way. It feels like I can be confused and just relax, and then I trust that this movie's gonna like take me home at the end.
Speeches.
Dude,
Time for a confession.
this movie, that was so great about it. It was like,
Not that
I don't know,
reality is
you said meta levels, but I think it was so interesting because it used like levels of meta to explore like what is fake and what is real and what is art and what is not. And so well, I was legit blown away. Because it's like, at the start, it's kind of just, the editing is probably the most standout part of it because it's
Yes.
very experimental. Because there's like 2 levels to the editing that's like really cool, or like probably like more that I'm not picking up, but it's like the level of just the regular people talking biographically, like documentarily, I should say, I suppose, and like talking about Elmir the Forger and his biographer, um, Irving. But then there's also, the like shadowed voice narration of Wells himself, kind of talking about, you know, what's the quote? Quote's like so. It's pretty, but is it art? Well, how is it valued? Value depends on opinion. Opinion depends on the expert. Faker, like Elmir, makes fools of the expert. So who's the expert? Who's the faker? So like lines like that overtop this regular old documentary. It's like, oh, so is this like what Elmi is doing art? But then there's the level of the editing where you have scenes where Irving and Elmir are talking to one another, but they're not actually talking to one another. It's just the editing.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell if I loved that or if I couldn't stand that. Either one of the two.
I loved it. I thought it was confusing to figure out that that's what he was doing at first, but eventually I ended up loving it. And not only do they edit it so that people are having conversations with each other, but they'll like complete each other's sentence or like fill in words for each other. And like
Yeah.
that's just so funny. I love that.
It was just such a fun film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the ideas exploring was fun.
And there's so many ideas to explore. We kind of have to hop on one. So I'm going to talk about the first one I think that you brought up, which was that, like, what is art and kind of forgery in art. And I think it's funny because I actually have a class where we kind of talk a lot about this. I'm taking this semester. And it was kind of funny because, a lot of people were claiming, right, that talked about how, like, once forging art was considered a skill and now it's not really, and is it really art to, mimic art to copy other artists' paintings and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, like, this is literally a movie, where it's not even considered, the ethics of copying it, right? In fact, it's necessary to the art, for this to be copied. It can't really be,
Also, sorry to go off.
Go?
But it was so interesting because you said the ethic is not even exploring the ethics of copying because it's also copying because a lot of the footage was from two different directors, also like Reinbach and the other guy's name, but they're also doing just a documentary on Elmir, so he just co-directed it with them in this version. So he literally copying other people's footage.
That's hilarious. I didn't
even realize that.
Yeah, it makes sense now because there's definitely things that are just like of different quality, But yeah, I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, this movie is very smart on a lot of levels.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but what I found really cool about it is that it has all these like hilarious meta stuff and really cool editing, and then this like upfront discussion of various philosophical topics and art. But then on the other hand, it's also very visually pleasing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I particularly
It's a
remember like
vibe.
this one shot in the beginning where it's like all these differently colored film canisters, and it kind of just like pans across them in this sort of like pattern of colors, and it was
Yeah.
so gorgeous.
Also, it was so interesting because it was like we have intro sequences now in movies where it's like characters' names, the director's name. It was kind of doing that, but it was just doing it to introduce like the scene of Oja like walking down the street and people seemingly looking at her, but I'm pretty sure that was fake footage. Well, not fake, but he was editing it so that they're not looking, and it was just people looking in a direction. He was just lining it up, so
Really?
it looked like Because what was interesting, well, what stood out to me is that they're looking in a direction, and we're assuming it's at her, but we don't know because the footage is just like her walking down the street, like a butt angle on her butt, walking down the street. So for all we know, it could be real or it could be fake that they're ogling her.
Yeah.
More on the subject, Derek. I gotta ask, what's your rating?
Oh, definitely 92.
That's pretty good.
Pretty solid.
But yeah, I
Risque,
actually don't know.
By the way, this movie with some of these things, like she's like one outfit where it's like literally like a blue kind of like I don't know what to call it even. Like not like a blue gown. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Wait. Start over. I think you might have cut out at the beginning of what you said.
Like there's like a montage of her, right, where she's like walking in like all these different outfits, and well, supposedly Picasso's like checking her out.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And there's like one where she's wearing this like blue like robe, and I was just like, oh my goodness. Like then I realized this they didn't care about nudity like 5 minutes later. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting. It's just so cool seeing like Orson Welles we associate, with Citizen Kane, right? I think we were all a bit skeptic going into this movie, like does Orson Welles kind of just do like really basic, clean stuff? But this is like the exact opposite of Citizen Kane. This is anything but basic and clean. So honestly, it's just refreshing for that alone.
Yeah. But coming back to what Derek said,
Yeah,
I want to like kind of get into this because I wonder if we are supposed to believe that all of these shots are just edited to make it look as if looking at her, or if she actually was. Because it definitely seems in the theme of the movie to just edit it that way. But I also think it's very funny on its own to just make like this like 10-minute long shot of like guys ogling this woman. Like I
yeah,
don't know, that's hilarious to me. Like
yeah,
it just seems like a great concept for a short, you know?
yeah. I think likely some of the shots maybe even been real, like, of people looking at her. I think it is kind of funny even funnier if like some of them were and some weren't.
Yeah, I'm trying to look now and see if we ever get a shot with her and one of the guys. I don't think we do though, right?
No, I'm pretty sure not. But I'm pretty sure that was intentional. Because also he says, even at the end, he says, "I promised you an hour of truth," and it's
Yeah,
been an hour. And I think the hour starts like after that scene or after those shots.
I agree.
I do
Yeah,
want to say that there were at least a couple shots of the men looking directly at her in the same shot. I
Oh
want to
yeah,
say.
I'm looking
I'm not
back through
sure.
now. There's nothing so far.
but yeah,
But
I don't know.
man,
That was such a great opening for me.
yeah, I know
But you
it's
were
so
saying that
fun.
about Citizen Kane is just hilarious to me too. That like that's sort of like his great legacy as a filmmaker, and then like a good chunk of this movie is him talking about making Citizen Kane, and then also
Yeah,
like doing the world to world stuff, and like it's just so like self-referential and hilarious.
It's
I
so
love it.
masturbatory, but like in a really good way, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like it becomes like it's like a self-aware masturbatory thing, right? Where sometimes you like watch a Kubrick or something, and it's like, come on, guy, like, or like when
yeah.
we watch that Tarkovsky movie, it's just like, really? Where this is like the epitome of Orson Welles. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't think
it's
there's ever a shot with her and one of the guys. In fact,
interesting.
anytime there is a person in the background, they like fade them out.
oh yeah.
Hmm.
That's the thing. Also, it was kind of interesting that probably the opening and the ending is both of Oja, and they're both like heavily edited to give you a sense of reality that's not reality. Kind of funny that it was she was kind of pivotal for that.
It's sort
Yeah,
of disappointing to me because I thought that that was sort of a cool um like not like foreshadowing, but like they kind of like reference it later with like the Picasso thing. And I thought it was cool how like what Picasso saw, this same woman like walking beautifully through the streets is the same thing that all of these random Joe Schmoes are seeing, and how like they're both like inspired by her in the same way. It's just only Picasso has the capability to like express that in such a masterful way. And
Oh yeah, that's why I don't know. That makes it even funnier for me because like the Picasso thing being like an edited reality, and this also being an edited reality. I think it was just kind of good touch for both the beginning and end to be that.
yeah, it's also like kind of an interesting judgment too on like basically like we sort of have a probably like a slight negative view of all these like creepy old men ogling this young woman, but like on the other hand, that's just the same thing Picasso was doing. He's like a creepy old man perving out on some
wait, no, I thought it was
young.
made really creepy when Picasso does it too, though.
Oh yeah,
Like, I think
Yeah, I
it's
guess
like
that's true.
very
It does
clear
have
you're supposed to be creepy as hell.
like eyes like fixated.
Yeah, and also like how you can like how how like subjective it is, right? Like we're literally seeing through his eyes, You can
Yeah.
hear like when he like opens and closes the blind, it's like loud as hell.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it doesn't. I didn't feel comfortable watching that. Also, I don't know. I feel about Orson Welles kind of like portraying it as like this exchange of goods. You know,
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of whack, but it's fine. There's a lot of great points about the movie. What are another great point? Someone give me another great point. We can go anywhere with it.
I like
Um,
the theme in the movie was we as an audience are watching people watch things. Like there's a lot of watching. And then like especially in that beginning sequence where she's walking around, right? So like she's walking, these old men are watching her. We're watching the men, and then also occasionally interspersed, they would sort of like back the camera out, and the camera would be filming a TV that was playing back a film of these old men watching her. So we're like watching, presumably like some editor off screen, watch a watch the replay of the movie that we were just watching. We're like watching
yes.
people watch these old men watch this woman. So it's like
Yeah, I think it's.
level of watching.
I think at least in like the last two levels of watching, I guess, like both us like having watching the cameraman and then like us watching the TV, right? I think it's to, like make you hyper aware that you are watching a movie, right? Um,
Hmm.
Orson Welles, in my opinion, he's puts a lot of stock into um like seeing is believing, you know. So he's like the eye, what your eye sees is like all you can really believe because you even have like that part where we're supposedly talking to Howard Hughes. I don't remember the exact line. It's something along the lines of like because like they talk to the voice of Howard Hughes, like how,
Yeah.
and then he kind of it's another line that kind of like basically it meant to imply that he's like questioning the credibility of the voice, you know. I just thought he's trying to make you hyper aware that you are watching a movie and how credible film is, which is obviously ridiculous in a highly edited movie like his.
Another cool thing he did with the editing was like he would sort of make a very like editorial or like from a distance judgment on what was happening using um what people had said about completely unrelated things, if that makes sense. So like we'll say like character A says something and then he uses character B saying something in reference to something completely different and a different time and place, but use that to sort of make a commentary on what was just said. Like, oh, that's completely unbelievable. I don't know if he
Mhm.
says that, but that's an example. But like someone will say something outrageous and then he'll use a clip of someone saying like that's obviously not true or something like that. And then just basically make commentary using people's clips of people saying other things.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how he does that. Because then there's like the other level to everything he does, where we know he's like in the editing booth, like watching it with us.
Yeah,
So I don't know.
literally cut to him like in the editing booth, right? Like,
Yeah, like
yes. And then there's also like these ridiculous scenes of like him talking to people, like talking to like, these like women, and but he's talking to them about like what he's telling us about, like this is the voiceover is him talking to these women, and it's so unclear what's happening.
Another thing that I loved was like how you can never tell whether like a person's talking, right? You can never tell if that person is reading off of a script for the movie F for Fake or if it's just documentary, like just like candid stuff, or if it's meant to look like candid stuff but it's actually scripted, or like vice versa, or what's going on.
All you
Like
know is that
because
it's
there were
all
a lot of
true.
scenes. Yeah, right. But like you have these scenes that's obviously like documentary footage where you have the Irving guy and then the Emir or whatever his name. Um,
Elmir, yeah.
yeah, Elmir. And like I guess we can't be for sure, but I think like it's obviously meant to appear like documentary footage. And then there'll be scenes that it cuts to immediately after, where like they're all having a party, and then it seems, like a documentary. This is just like they had a camera at this Elmir's party. But then it'll have Orson Welles himself, like sitting in the middle of people, giving what's obviously a very scripted thing that's not for some documentary, but it's specifically for F for Fake. And you don't know, like, are these people around him aware that he's acting? Is he acting? What's happening? And like, I don't know, it's so like confusing, but in such a delightful way. I love it. And like, are these people around him? Are they just acting like they're at a party and this is all really just part of F for Fake? Or was this really a party and then Kubrick comes in and starts acting?
You mean Wells?
Oh yeah. Sorry, for some reason I get those two names up, but
It's not okay.
yeah, like
Fired, but
it's just like so hilarious to try and imagine what it was like to film this and like the absurdity that it must have been.
And you can't tell, like, Elmire will have these parties where it seems like Wells is invited, but like looking back, I'm not even sure. Like, was Wells even at these or not? Like, it wouldn't really make sense for him to be there. Why would he? Like, we'll like do a shot of like him and what's the other director's name, Derek?
Francois.
Yeah, Francois. I'll have like a shot of like him and Francois. I'll shot of like Francois and Elmire. It's like, okay, they must all be in the same place. But then looking back, you're like, are they really in the same place?
That's like, he does that a lot where like it looks like two people are together having a conversation, but they might not actually be. And so like I think you have to watch this like a couple times to see what happening and which are, and like it definitely comes back to that like motif of the magician and like smoke and mirrors. He's like definitely using editing smoke and mirrors to make things happen that didn't actually happen. It's so like it really is like a magic trick. It's so cool.
Yeah. Speaking of magic, what do you guys think at the beginning? I actually haven't talked about it at all. Why do you kind of frames this as a magic trick?
Oh, I was gonna say I think it is kind of because a magic trick is probably like classically the thing that you can grab onto that's fake, but trying to impersonate reality. And that's pretty much what movie and art is. It's like an abstraction of reality. But a magic trick is more than just is an abstraction of reality, but it's also fake. So it's kind of like him saying, is art fake as well, inherently?
Yeah, or like also, I think with magic, it's like a suspension of disbelief, right? Like kind of going off what you're saying.
Yes, and which is necessary, watch a movie of any fiction, or read a book,
Yeah.
If it's like, you have to suspend your belief that these people don't exist and the things that happen to them don't matter because they don't exist.
Or even with paintings, right? Like, you can't appreciate a painting if all you see is it for what it is,
Yeah, colors on a canvas.
Yeah, exactly. I also thought it was interesting, though, how in this kind of opening monologue, he talks about how a magician is just an actor. I alluded to it at the top of the show. A magician is just an actor playing the part of a magician, right? And it's funny because then this guy who's supposed to be a magician, which means he is therefore an actor, is the one narrating our entire movie, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to believe this guy when he just told you that he's an actor.
Mm-hmm.
So that also is I thought was interesting.
Yeah, he's a classic narrator, but not unreliable narrator, but at the same time unclassical in the content.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting to me though because you do have to take his word for some things and basically believe him as a reliable narrator in some respects, right? Because I feel like that's sort of what he does in the beginning with that whole bit about like, for the next hour, everything I tell you will be true. And I think for the most part, that is the case. Like it might be edited in a confusing way, but I think like everything that he tells you is strictly fact. And I kind of like that because like I was saying before about how like in this movie, you don't necessarily feel like you have to go back every 10 minutes or 10 seconds and like figure out what's going on and like trace an exact narrative of what's going on. I feel like a magician, he's very good at getting you to suspend your disbelief and just say like, I'm going to like take my hands off the wheel and you're just going to show me what you're going to show me. And I'm going to take it for what it is. So I feel like even if he's playing tricks on you, you're aware of that, and you kind of just let it go and still trust him anyway. And that's how
Yeah.
you get the most enjoyment out of it.
The tricks he pulls are even when he's like, okay, for the next hour I'm going to tell you the truth, and he uses only footage that real footage that other people have used to make a documentary about Elmire. So he just edits in such a way that whether or not the actual sentences and the context that they're used in is like what they're real and about the kind of interesting.
Well, Derek, I have a question for you.
Sure.
As you stated, all of the footage we have is real, right? And we've kind of come to believe that Orson Welles prioritizes the image over, over audio, right? Over the oratory, over the oratory, because I was talking about with the whole Hughes thing, etc. So what if maybe none of the narratives potentially real, but all of our images are, and then in that last scene, obviously, we get some very it does seem like an acted out scene, right, between him and the woman.
Yeah, Oja, yeah. 100%. That's like the interesting part. Is interesting touch because you could have easily not put that in.
Mhm.
Like you didn't have to make the last part inarguably an acted plot, but he did just to make you aware that the person that you've been talking to is also potentially a fake. And I think that
The beauty
that's
of his
an
magic
interesting
trick,
touch.
right, is he gets you to believe him. He tells you that he's an actor, and he gets you to believe him for a whole movie to the point where even once this hour's done, you still believe him, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it's like, and honestly, it's a lie. Somebody goes like, "There's no reason to believe that this ever happened with Picasso or anything, but you believe him because you want to believe it. You want to believe everything else. And maybe that's his magic trick."
That's exactly it. I think like that's the point. You do want to believe him, and that's why it works so well. Because it's similar to like a magic trick. If you go to see a magician and you spend the whole time there thinking like, I know this is all a trick, and I'm gonna look as hard as I can to try and figure out where all the strings are and stuff, you're not gonna enjoy yourself as much as if you just like say, maybe this guy really is telling the truth. Maybe this is all real. It feels a lot more magic that way than if you're trying to dissect it the whole time. And I think like that's definitely how the movie works. Like you could go in trying to piece everything together, but it's much more enjoyable to just like let it happen and let him show you what he's gonna.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part because he makes you question whether or not it even matters if it's real.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what you have to do anyway for like any movie. Is like, well, I'm just gonna assume Black Widow is a real person, so I can enjoy this movie fully. Kind of just what you have to do to enjoy film, and he kind of
But you
brings
do
into question
feel,
whether or not that you should do or not.
yeah, exactly. But you do feel tricked afterwards, right? Like I think that feeling still stays. Um, you do feel deceived by Orson Welles, which I think is interesting. But like you said, why? Because I don't feel deceived by whoever the hell was directing these Marvel movies when, you know, if I ever find out Captain America wasn't real, although I suspend my disbelief in the same way, at least while I'm watching a movie.
I actually feel the opposite. I did not feel deceived by Wells in this movie at all. Like
Yeah, I didn't feel deceived so much as kind of like amazed at what he did. That's the only thing that was like I was like, holy crap! How did this guy do this?
You
especially
played a
like
bit.
at the end once he says, because like he does trick you by telling this basically convoluted story and then going at the end he's like, oh, by the way, that was all a lie, your hour of truth passed a while ago, like 17 minutes ago. To me, like the fact that he's telling you that this is a lie makes it more believable that that hour was truthful. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Mhm.
Like it makes it like, okay, this guy might lie, but he's gonna tell me afterwards, and that makes me trust him all the more. And I feel like as a viewer, I felt like I was well taken care of in that respect.
Sure. Um, Really quick, we don't have a ton of time, so before we get into saying which movie's better, we should probably talk about like the narrative to this movie, at least somewhat. What do you guys think of the whole Elmire, Cliff Irving kind of plotline?
I thought it was great. He kind of like has so many different facets to all of these three things, like these different storylines, and then kind of like jumps between them. So he has like the Elmire as a forger, and then he has Irving as a forger, kind of that pivots to this like Howard Hughes thing, and then he also has like himself as a forger, with his own. He talks about Citizen Kane and all this sort of thing. So he like pivots between these sort of like three forgers and the interactions between all three of them, and it's, I don't know, really interesting. Also, I do want to mention, to me, um, this scene was absolutely hilarious. um, when they're talking about Elmire's talking, and they kind of mention how like it's not illegal to make these forgeries unless you sign them. And then like Elmire's like, "Oh, yeah, I never signed them. I never signed any of them." And then
And they're
Irving's
quiet.
like, "What was that?"
And then they're like completely silent.
Yeah, and then Irving's like, "You never signed them." He's like, "Nope, never signed them." And it's literally just like cutting between the two of them, absolutely silent for like probably a good like 20, 30 seconds. And it's so hilarious because we just saw Elmire signing these portraits. Nope, never signed them. And like Irving is just staring at Elmire, and Elmire is just like, "Nope, I'm sticking to it." And oh my god, it's so funny.
And then also, it's kind of like interesting. He does the same thing that he did with Oja, where it's like you don't see them together facing like each other. You see them
Yeah,
one by one. So it's like, wait, are they talking to one another or not?
yeah.
I thought that was like a hilarious touch.
Yeah, I thought it was also this whole Elmire character that he's built up is just like so great
Yeah.
because we know so much about Elmire and we still like know almost nothing about Irving. You know,
hmm
like his basic like he was a writer and he was bad at it, so he started writing fiction stories, posing as nonfiction stories. We have like very little idea of his character besides like he's kind of sleazy. You know,
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting. Like, then we of course we have Elmire, who we know like everything about, but we really don't know. Yeah, it's all great.
Yeah, but he's kind of like the same thing too, right? Like he wasn't very successful as a painter, and then he started making forgeries and then became famous. So they're definitely paralleled in that way. I just love how in this movie they alternate so well between this very like meta satirical absurd portrayal of what's going on, and then they also intersperse this like very sincere thoughtful kind of commentary on the whole thing, like
Yeah,
when they have like these like extended shots of Howard Hughes' hotel room, and
Oh
then
yeah.
Wells is sort of just like standing there, like, waxing poetic on the nature of art and all this sort of stuff. Like it's very like touching, and it's just contrasted so well with all of the silliness and satire of before, and it balances the two like so expertly.
for sure. Um,
And I love that line where he's talking about like Picasso and then forgeries, and then um I can't remember the exact context, but it's something along the line of like, Picasso says, "I can paint fake Picassos as well as anybody."
yeah, yeah, yeah. Where
And
he's
we're like,
talking about how he got like he showed him all these paintings, right? Like that were supposedly Picasso's. He's like, nope, 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 and then he's like, dude, I just saw you paint that one, Picasso.
mhm.
For him, he's like, I can paint fake Picassos as well as anybody.
Yeah, exactly. That one like really like hit me.
Mhm. Okay, a couple things really quick. Videos are kind of well, we're doing fine on time. But
Yeah, we're good. We have plenty of time.
one thing I did want to ask though was this is just a random thought that I had from the movie. I'm curious what you guys thought. I see Cliff Irving and what he does, his form of fakery, I guess, as like ethically wrong, I guess, and um, I I don't think it's like yeah, I just don't think it's morally okay. Well, I think you kind of don't think that about Elmire. At least I didn't think that about Elmire. because
Yeah,
it's kind of fun and it's anti-establishment, but really it's the same thing. I'm curious why that is, or if you guys not even share those same thoughts.
because the interesting thing is, with art, there's the museum experts or whatever that dictate whether or not it's real or not, and whether or not it deserves to be in the gallery, or they're gonna buy it. With a novel or whatnot that like Irving is making about Howard Hughes, he's not fooling some art gallery people who are just like spent whatever amount of time to be able to say like what is good and what is bad about art and what is real and not real art. He's Irving is fooling public. Because those are the people who are going to be like, is this real or not? Is this book good? Is it bad? Those are the people who are judging Irving, not judging, but judging like the contents of it. So he's like more reprehensible because he's fooling common folk who just try to read a goddamn book.
Yeah, I also think that in terms of like what he's lying about, so like Elmire creates these forgeries, basically in the name of people that, at least for the most part, are like dead and passed on, whereas like Irving is basically like cashing in on the fame of this guy who's still alive, but not only that, who's like desperately trying to get privacy. And so he's like literally like going counterintuitive to what Howard Hughes has like been trying to get for a long time. And in addition to that, I think that it could also be the time thing, because if this was set in a time where Elmire was still pretending to be not a forger, I think we would probably have a less sympathetic view of him. But at this time that we're seeing it, we're in the period between where Elmire has now admitted to being a forger, but Irving has not yet admitted to being a fake. He's still like running with it. So I think like in that's the reason why they seem different. So if we watch the same thing like 20 or 30 years down the line after Irving has admitted to being a faker, then I think we would view him a little on the other side of the coin. If we viewed this 20, 30 years earlier, before Elmire had admitted to being a forger, we would view him less favorably.
Yeah, so I agree with everything you guys said in terms of like why I probably actually felt this way. I don't think this is the point Wells was making though. I don't know if I necessarily agree with the point Wells was making, but I think Wells, just from the rest of the movie, claimed that we're sympathetic to Elmire because of the art that it is, right? Where with anything with a narrative, we become attached to the narrative, right? We understand that. Well, you have to decide how much you want to, believe it, right? And especially with like something like an autobiography, it's like the one narrative that's really true. That's why we love like things like reality TV so much. It's finding out that it's fake is just also just much harder to stomach. In the art, it's like I don't think most people even care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That it wasn't written by Picasso or it wasn't drawn by Picasso or whatever or Matisse or Anyways.
Yeah, they say that directly too. Like that these art dealers, like one of the reasons why they don't really question him that much, that he's bringing in so many of these artworks in such a short period of time, is because they want to believe that they're real because they're getting their hands on something so valuable. So like they basically want to give him credibility. They're invested in it.
And it's also great because I love that too when they're going with the guys talking about how he would always just get this art from Elmire without question. How talking about how like there's like one piece that he really wanted and Elmire said he didn't have it, and then later that night he found it in his drawer.
Yeah.
That's hysterical. Okay, a couple
yeah,
things
that
before we
guy's
close
such
up.
a kook.
Yeah.
Like, how did you know, Francois? You're a genius. It was in my drawer.
A couple things before we wrap up. New segments I'm adding to the show. I know, really, I've told you guys about this, but I think it's gonna be fun. Favorite quote from either movie.
Oh, F for Fear. It's pretty, but is it art? That one that I said. Well, how is it valued? The value depends on opinion. Opinion depends on the faker. Like Elmir pulls of the expert. So who's the expert? Fake. I love that so much.
Yeah, that woman's great. The woman they're always talking to.
Oh yeah.
I like her. Caleb, how about you? Favorite quote from either movie?
Maybe this is cheating because I already brought it up, but I can paint fake Picassos as well as anybody. Like
Okay,
that just
sure.
made my brain like think so much.
You guys both went with quotes you already had, although you didn't notice during the segment, so I guess it's fair. Um, my favorite one I think was just towards the beginning, me saying, or wait, she was I don't remember who actually does this, but it was it's not whether it's fake or not, it's whether it's a good fake or a bad fake.
Yeah.
The whole movie, and also really gets you thinking. Okay, another thing, favorite character
Orson Welles.
in either movie.
It, yeah.
Sorry, I shouldn't say favorite
Orson,
character. I'm gonna say favorite. Well, let's do. We can do both. Favorite character. Yeah, Orson Welles, Derek.
yeah.
Caleb.
I'd have to say Elmir. He's just too kooky and like in a way not self-aware.
Yeah, I would probably also go Elmir. I think he's so bizarre, but like in the best way possible.
And I think it's pleasing to like in a movie that's so self-aware and how like we have some characters like Orson Welles that are super self-aware. We have this one character who's like completely not self-aware at all. There's such a great contrast there, and it's so like relieving, like almost like a comic relief when we get to him, and he's just kind of like, "Nope, didn't sign it. I found it in my drawer. What do you have to say?"
um, okay, and last one, best performance, which I know a lot of times aligns with favorite character, but best performance by actor actress.
Probably I'd say go or not. Nah, probably not Frigo, but the maid in Children. Yes.
That's what I was gonna say too. Derek Stolman. The maid was so good from the beginning. She's like that scene where she's like crying and really good subtle stuff. Caleb, how about
Yeah.
I'd have to say Preco actually. I thought like maybe a kid, but I don't know. I think it's like really impressive when a kid can pull off, like a really good acting job. I'm sure that's pretty difficult. So I was impressed.
Yeah, yeah, and even the little things about Rico, you know what I mean? Like when he's like waking up in the morning, does the whole like it doesn't feel fake. You know what I mean? Just crazy.
Yeah.
Someone who like he doesn't look that old. I don't think he can be older than like 13 or 14.
Oh, do you even think he's that much? I was thinking he was more like
I'm saying I think he's young.
like 9, 8
I
or
think the
9.
oldest he could possibly be. I'm saying
Yeah.
13 or 14. Yeah, he's a young looking 13 or 14 year old.
Yeah.
Okay. Now for a moment of truth. We both
Oh
got
wait, real quick.
Okay.
There's like a couple things that I thought were really cool about F for Fear
Fake.
that we haven't F for Fake. I swear to God, I'm gonna keep saying that because I get my F words stuff.
Watch the F words, Derek.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but the interesting thing there's just like a bunch of that we haven't talked about. It's like at the beginning, Orson Welles stands in front of the white canvas train station, shifts, and it like turns into like a studio, and then he narrates from the studio like 2 times, and narrates otherwise from the editing booth. So it's kind of like where he's editing from is, or where he's narrating from is like up in the air as well. And I thought that was so. And then also the shots of Ojo walking and people looking at her.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was interesting how frantic it was. There's just like so much energy in those shots. It's like all the cars were whizzing by. The jump cuts were so fast.
Yeah. Sorry. I thought those scenes were so fun, Like all of the cuts, just cut, 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 cut. It was crazy, but it was like not ugly somehow, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was so frantic and there's such urgency, yet it was so clean. I thought it was so well done.
Okay.
And then there was when he's in the editing booth and he's talking about putting together Elmir's story. He literally does that physically. You can see him touch putting the film reel together, like the machine and everything. I thought that was hilarious.
That was
And
really
then,
good. I think that goes back to like we're definitely watching a movie, right?
Yeah,
It really wants to make you hyper aware of that.
yeah. I think because this movie, I think, really touches on what is a movie in general art, but more specifically a movie. So I thought that was a very good.
I think it's interesting when we're talking about like copying and forgery. When you bring up like when you see the actual film, because that is what movies are copying off of, right? What a movie is, it's this film, copied over and over again, millions of times for everyone to see, right? Like the film,
Mm-hmm.
that those strips of film are our original movie. I thought that was interesting. But I actually have to head out soon, so we gotta vote.
All right, I just have two more.
Okay.
When Wells is talking in the churchyard
Mhm.
about being a fake at the Chatar. I don't know how to pronounce it, and it says winter is coming. It's just from like a spring setting to like knowing. I thought it was like so fast, and also the perspective shifts from the church trees. I thought that was really cool because it was so well done.
Very Jon Snowy. Winter's coming. Also, speaking of Game of Thrones, real quick. No, dude, the oh my gosh, I'm spacing out. I'm sorry. Oja, her accent is like so much like oh my gosh, so bad I can't remember anyone's name. What's Tyrion's like? Shay from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, Shay. I think there might be from the same.
Yeah, it was like it's crazy. Anyways, sorry. What's your last point, Derek?
And then the last one was at the beginning when Wells is like at the editing booth and he's talking about Elmir, and he says Elmir the faker. The screen that he's looking at turns in like the fake screen.
Oh.
Okay,
I was just reading a little bit on the production of F for Fake, and what it seems like is that originally they had planned to make this movie just about Elmir, and then like during production, like it got all screwy and like everything started going weird, and like that's when it came out that this Irving guy might have been a fake when originally he was just supposed to be a biographer. So in a way, like this movie that we watched is a movie about making the movie that they had planned to make.
that's awesome.
It's really interesting. Yeah. But yeah, for my vote, it's gonna have to be F for Fake. I really love the other one, but F for Fake is just too complex and so pleasing at the same time. I just loved it. It's my style of movie for sure.
Derek, how about you?
Definitely F fake. Honestly, I like the story more in Children Are Watching Us because
Sure.
like it's a story
Mhm.
and fake is docudrama, call it, but so it's kind of like has a
Well, I think it's considered an essay film.
yeah, exact essay film. That's a perfect.
I didn't
But yeah,
if that's a thing before me. But yeah,
oh
yeah. If only I could take credit for that phrasing. Okay, and I would also vote for F for Fake. It sucks because the Children Are Watching Us is like it was we had the Sica versus Wells, which was our second seed versus our 31st seed, right? So about the biggest disparity it's gonna get, and like you would expect. I thought this was gonna go one of two ways. Where like the Sica, or I guess it could go one of three ways. I thought either the Sica's gonna do a really good movie, right, and it's gonna be up against like some Wells' fifth, which is not very good, which is the thing that we're kind of afraid of going into this, is that Wells' fifth movie would be not Citizen Kane, so it was, be a bit like, or I thought it was very good. They were both really bad, right, and that's kind of how the Sica would get a win. Turns out they were both amazing movies. Like I really,
Yeah.
which really sucks. Also, it came from the TheyShowPicturesDon'tThey.com's top 1,000 list, and they also have like they have it all the way up to 2,000 actually. The Sica did not have a fifth movie in the top 2,000 movies. This was actually, I don't remember where I found this. I think I just found like the Sica's best movie list. Okay, So the person watching this was not in the top 2,000 movies, which is crazy to me.
Hmm.
Because to me, it felt like, one of the better movies I've seen. I mean, it's maybe a big exaggeration, but definitely top 1,000 worthy. We've watched, better than Great Expectations, and I would say better than, probably better than Day of Wrath, better than Strike. There's a lot of movies, I think.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot.
It's the only ones we watched so far that have all made the top 100, 1,000, or not 100, top 1,000. And even After Fake was 267, right? So likely, according to critics, it was 2,000 spots worse, which is just ridiculous to me because they were much closer in my eyes than that. But anyways, so Orson Welles moves on. He will be facing he'll be facing FW. No, he'll be facing Tarkovsky in the next round, which should be fun. It's gonna be Orson Welles' Chimes at Midnight, which I've never actually heard of, versus Tarkovsky's Solaris. So, for those looking for the upset, I think Orson Welles could definitely go down here. Solaris, obviously, extremely famous movie, and I've never heard of Chimes for Midnight. Maybe it's amazing. Maybe it's like, just as good as F for Fake, and if it is, then it should be interesting. But until then, we gotta decide our next movie. So what are you guys thinking?
Let's check the bracket here.
How do you guys feel about this? How do you guys feel about Italian movies? We liking the Italian?
Good.
I don't know how much Italian movies you guys have watched before.
Yes, good.
I like Italian.
Yeah,
Italian,
You
You think you want to do the Fellini?
yeah.
we can do the Fellini. Sorry, I was thinking, we can. Now might be the appropriate time since we are on Italian realism to go Rossellini.
Oh yeah, we can do Rossellini.
And plus, this is our famed week.
Yeah. Oh no, Stromboli versus The Godfather.
So we got Rossellini, Stromboli. I'm not sure if it's Italian realist. I know he is definitely Italian realist. Versus The Godfather Part 3 with Francis Ford Coppola. I'm stoked. We might try to get a couple people on the podcast. We'll see. But I'm excited.
Yeah, good
And-
that'd be hilarious.
Until then, I'm Matthew Moore. I am joined by Caleb Ferguson and Derek Shorzhinsky. You are watching, or you're listening to, rather, the Quest for the Best Director podcast. And remember, watch more movies. Have a great night.